In 1923, a team of British explorers entered the deep forests of western Java on a simple survey mission. The days felt ordinary enough, mapping streams, collecting samples, until the forest grew unnervingly quiet. Birds vanished, branches shifted above them without wind, and at dusk, a sharp, echoing cry cut through the trees. By nightfall, they knew something was following their camp from the canopy. They just didn't know how close it already was. So before we continue, please make sure to leave a like and let us know where you're watching from. Thanks. We reached Java at the end of the rainy season of 1923, when the air still held more water than seemed possible and every surface felt damp to the touch. Our ship slid into the harbor at Batavia under a low, colorless sky. The sea was flat. The town looked tired. I stood at the rail with my collar open and my shirt stuck to my back and watched the shoreline approach. I remember the smell first: salt, rotting vegetation, wood smoke, and something sweet that I could not name. There were 4 of us from England. Harrington, our leader, had the sort of posture that never relaxed. He had served in the war and carried himself as if someone still watched him from a parade ground. His boots always shone, even in the mud. Wilkes, the naturalist, was narrower in the shoulders and broader in the eyes. He had a habit of staring at things with a hungry focus, whether it was a bird on a branch or a stain on a wall. Edwin was the youngest, not yet 20, with hair that never stayed flat and a laugh that arrived too easily. I was there to record everything: the land, the people, the animals, the routes, and the conditions. At least that was the plan written in London, on clean paper, far from the sounds that would later keep me awake. We had come because of rumors. A report had reached the Royal Society about a creature in the forests of western Java. The words had been vague: a great bat, an unknown primate, a winged predator. There was mention of a cry and a word written in careful ink: Ahool. In the club, with brandy on the table and the fire burning low, it had sounded distant and harmless. In Batavia, with sweat running down my arms and flies landing on my notebook, it felt less so. We spent 2 days in the town gathering supplies and speaking with anyone who had traveled inland. Most of the Europeans shrugged when we mentioned a large bat. They advised us about snakes, fever, and bandits instead. It was the local boatmen and porters who responded differently. When Harrington spoke the word Ahool in his stiff accent, mouths closed. A few men crossed their arms and shook their heads without a word. One older man, skin-lined from the sun, answered in a low voice. Our interpreter, a quiet fellow named Yusuf, translated. He says you should not follow that name into the forest, Yusuf told us. He says it belongs to the deep places, far from the roads. He says it does not like fire. He tells you to stay near the river and leave when the rains strengthen again. Harrington thanked him and dismissed the warning. Later, in the small room we shared above a trading office, he told us we could not allow stories to govern the scope of our work. He reminded us of our commission, of the importance of cataloging unknown species. Wilkes agreed without hesitation. His eyes had brightened at the mention of a large bat, and he had already begun listing possible explanations. I sat on my bedroll, listened to the sounds of the street outside, and tried to push away the image of the old man's face when he heard the word. We left Batavia at dawn on the 3rd day, traveling by riverboat toward the interior. The vessel was little more than a long wooden shell with a canvas roof and a small engine that coughed and shook. We moved along brown water that reflected the sky in broken patches. On either side, the forest rose in thick walls of trunks and leaves. Vines hung from the branches. Birds called from hidden perches. Insects swarmed above the surface of the river in humming clouds. The heat wrapped around us. Sweat gathered under my hat and ran into my eyes. Harrington stood at the bow with a map in his hands, pointing out bends and junctions to no one in particular. Wilkes made notes about plant life and asked constant questions of Yusuf. Edwin shifted between excitement and discomfort. One moment he would lean over the edge, pointing at a bright bird or a large fish. The next he would sit back, fanning his face with his hat and muttering about the smell of the water. By late afternoon, we reached a small settlement where the river split. Houses on stilts lined the bank. Children watched us from doorways. Dogs barked and then backed away. We took on more fuel for the engine and negotiated for porters to guide us upriver and then overland. Again, when the word Ahool reached the ears of the villagers, movement in the air seemed to change. Conversations slowed. Faces tightened. A woman pulled her child away from the edge of the jetty. One man agreed to guide us. He introduced himself as Satria. His shoulders were broad and his eyes patient, but there was a strain in the way he looked at the forest. Through Yusuf, he told us he had seen shadows pass above the trees at night. He did not say the name at first. Only when Harrington pressed him did he lower his voice and let it out. Ahool, Yusuf translated. He says he has heard it call. He will take you inland, but he wants to keep the fires bright at night, and he will not walk after sundown. He wants extra pay for that. Harrington argued about the terms, more for pride than for money, but in the end he agreed. That night we slept in hammocks under a mosquito net in a hut that smelled of smoke and damp wood. I woke several times, not from any noise I could name, but from the weight of the air and the hardness of the unfamiliar mattress under my back. Each time I listened for some strange sound from the forest and heard only the steady chorus of insects and frogs. The next morning we left the river and began our journey on foot. The forest swallowed us quickly. Within a few hundred yards the light changed. The canopy filtered the sun into a pale, uneven glow that never felt stable. The ground stayed soft under our boots, covered in fallen leaves and tangled roots. We walked in single file, Satria at the front, then Harrington, then me, then Wilkes, then Edwin with two younger porters who carried the bulk of our supplies. Travel in that place removed the sense of distance. Hours passed, but the forest ahead always looked the same. Sweat soaked my shirt. Leeches found their way up my socks. Ants marched in endless lines across fallen logs. Every sound seemed close. A drop of water from a leaf, the snap of a twig underfoot, the call of an unseen bird. My thoughts moved between the task of walking, the notes I would later write, and the memory of clear, cold mornings in England. It was during one of our short rests that I noticed the first small oddity. We had stopped beside a narrow stream so the porters could refill their canteens. The water moved slowly, dark and shallow, over smooth stones. There were insects on the surface. There were plants at the edge. There were no birds. I had grown used to their constant presence, a call, a movement of branches, a flash of color. Here there was nothing. The air felt thick. Even Edwin, who usually spoke without pause, stood silent. "Is something wrong with the water?" I asked. Satria shook his head and knelt to drink. When he straightened, he scanned the trees above us with a careful gaze that made the small hairs on my arms lift. "What are you looking for?" I said. He replied in his own tongue. Yusuf listened and swallowed before translating. "He says we should move on soon," Yusuf said. "He does not like this place. He says the canopy is too quiet. He says the shadows stay too long on the branches." It was a strange remark, without a clear meaning, but it unsettled me more than I cared to admit. I glanced up. The branches formed a dense lattice overhead. Some leaves did appear darker, but I told myself it came from a thicker cluster or a trick of the light. Harrington clapped his hands, announced that the rest had been sufficient, and urged us back onto the trail. By late afternoon, we reached a ridge where the trees thinned slightly, and we could see a broad valley ahead. Mist clung to the lower ground. A river wound through the center, narrow from that distance. Satria said that we would camp before the descent and make our way into the valley the following day. According to the notes he had received from another guide, several disappearances had occurred in that region. Hunters, he said, a surveyor, a small group of traders who had chosen a shortcut without permission. We set up camp on a patch of level ground beneath a cluster of tall trees. The porters erected 2 canvas tents for us and a smaller shelter for themselves. A fire pit was dug and stones arranged. When the flames rose, throwing light onto the trunks, I felt a small wave of relief. The forest at night had occupied my thoughts since London, and it soothed me to see the glow of the fire and the shadows of my companions moving around it. As darkness gathered, the forest around us changed character. The sharp cries of daytime birds faded, replaced by the softer sounds of nocturnal creatures. Insects produced a steady high chorus. Somewhere in the distance, something large moved through undergrowth with a slow, heavy rhythm. Harrington sat near the fire with his map, marking our progress. Wilkes examined a specimen jar by lamplight. Edwin tried to dry his socks by holding them too close to the flames. It was then that we heard the first sound we could not place. It came from beyond the reach of the fire, from somewhere above the tree line that circled our little clearing. A short, sharp call, drawn out at the end in a way that made my chest tighten. "Ahoo!" The single word cut through the insect chorus with a clarity that left no doubt. It was not a human voice. It carried a deep, hollow tone that seemed to press against the air rather than ride on it. The sound ended, and the forest rushed in again. Insects, branches, the crackle of the fire. Edwin froze, one sock still in his hands. Wilkes looked up so fast that his glasses slipped down his nose. Harrington set his pencil on his knee and frowned. Satria stared into the dark with his jaw clenched and his hands flat on his knees. "What was that?" I asked, though I already knew which word would answer. No one replied at once. Then Satria spoke, very softly. Yusuf listened with his head bent and then turned to us. "He says it calls its own name," Yusuf said. "He says it knows we are here." The fire was not large, but in that moment it felt very important. Every face around it turned a little closer to the flames. I became aware of my own breathing and the sound of blood in my ears. Harrington broke the silence first. "Some sort of night bird," he said. "A bit theatrical, but nothing more than that." His voice sounded steady, but his hand moved toward the rifle next to his chair without looking. He rested his fingers on the stock and left them there. Edwin set his socks aside and reached for his own weapon. The movement was clumsy. His hands did not quite obey him. Wilkes blinked a few times and pushed his glasses back up. "I have heard fruit bats make calls, sir," he said, speaking more to the fire than to any of us. "But that was different. There was a shape to it, two parts, almost structured." He caught himself and stopped. I could see him wrestling with his own curiosity. Part of him wanted to analyze the sound, to break it into notes and patterns. Another part wanted to leave it untouched. Satria said something short and firm. Yusuf translated without delay. "He says we must add more wood," Yusuf told us. "He wants the fire to stay strong all night. He says the glow keeps it in the tall trees." Edwin swallowed. "Keeps what in the tall trees?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Before Yusuf could repeat the question, another call came. This time it seemed closer. The shape of the sound remained the same. A short burst, then the drawn-out end. "Ahool!" It came from above and a little to our right. I felt a faint vibration in the ground under my boots, though that may have been my own reaction. The forest fell quiet for the briefest instant around the sound, as if small creatures had paused out of instinct. Then the normal chorus resumed, thin around the edges. I realized my hand had moved to my notebook. I forced it away. There was nothing to write at that moment that would not leave out the most important part, the feeling, the way the sound went not only to the ear but to the spine. "More wood," Harrington said. "Quickly now." The porters obeyed at once. They threw branches and thicker pieces of timber onto the flames until sparks rose high and the light reached further into the trees. Shadows lengthened and withdrew with each movement. The trunks nearest to us glowed on one side and remained black on the other. When I looked up, the canopy remained a tangle of dark shapes without clear detail. We heard the call twice more that night, once directly overhead, a little further away, once somewhere beyond the ridge. Each time it came without warning. Each time it ended with that stretched final note. Between calls we heard something else, a broad movement of air, a pressure change rather than a clear sound, the impression of wings passing through space without contact. Sleep came in fragments. We took watches in pairs. I shared the second watch with Edwin. We sat side by side near the fire while the others lay back in their tents or under the shelter. The air cooled slightly, but the humidity never lifted entirely. Sweat dried on my shirt and then returned. Edwin stared at the darkness beyond the light. "Do you think it is just one?" he asked quietly, "or more than one calling in turn?" I considered the question. My mind drifted to the map in Harrington's pocket and the small marks that indicated missing men. "If it is one, it covers a great distance," I said. "If it is several, they have agreed on the same voice. I do not know which thought I prefer." He gave a short laugh that held no humor. "I did not mind the idea when we were in London," he said. "A big bat, a discovery. Now my legs do not want to take me further inland." I felt the same reluctance, though my pride did not allow me to say it outright. Instead, I watched the line where the firelight ended and the dark began. Several times I thought I saw movement at that border, but each time it resolved into a branch, a low plant, or the shape of a rock. Near dawn, when the sky had not yet changed color but the forest had started to shift toward morning sounds, a branch snapped somewhere above us. This time it was not a small twig. It was something thicker, breaking under weight. Leaves fell into the clearing in a slow drift. One landed in my lap. It was broad and green, still wet with sap. We did not hear the call then, only the soft rush of something large passing from one tree to another out of sight. The fire had burned down to embers. Harrington emerged from his tent with his shirt undone and his hair flattened on one side. "What are you staring at?" he asked. Edwin pointed upward. "Something moved through the canopy," he said. "It broke a branch." Harrington tilted his head back and studied the leaves. "Monkeys," he said, "or a hornbill landing badly. There's no use turning every sound into a threat." He spoke with more impatience than conviction. I saw that his hand shook slightly as he buttoned his shirt. We broke camp at first light. Satria pushed us to move with more urgency than the day before. He kept his eyes on the branches as much as on the trail. The porters spoke quietly among themselves. I caught the word again several times in their exchanges. They did not look upward when they said it. The descent into the valley took longer than I expected. The ground grew steeper and more treacherous. Rocks hid under the leaves. Roots formed sudden steps. We lost our footing more than once. The air grew even thicker, if that was possible. Each breath felt heavy. As we reached lower ground, a new smell drifted toward us. It stood out from the constant mix of damp soil and growing things. It was harsher. There was the sharp note of blood and the heavier weight of decay. Flies gathered in a cloud ahead, near a cluster of bushes. Satria raised his hand for us to stop. He moved forward alone, pushing branches aside with the barrel of his rifle. When he reached the center of the thicket, he went still. The way his back stiffened told me enough. Harrington walked up to join him, refusing to be held back. I followed. Wilkes came after me with a handkerchief pressed to his face. Edwin remained a few steps behind. A small clearing opened within the bushes. In the middle lay the remains of an animal. It had been a boar, judging by the shape of the skull and the size of the hooves. Very little else remained intact. The torso had been opened, ribs curved outward. Flesh had been torn away in long strips. The head was attached by a thin line of tissue. The spine showed in several places, scraped clean. What stood out most were the wounds on the shoulders and neck. They were not ragged. They formed deep, narrow punctures in sets that suggested claws or long teeth inserted from above and pulled down. The ground around the carcass bore marks of impact, as if something heavy had dropped onto it from height. Flies crawled over everything. The air buzzed with them. The smell pressed into the back of my throat. "Big cat," Harrington said, though there was a hollow space in his tone. "Or a large python that did not finish the meal." Wilkes shook his head and pointed at one of the punctures. "Cats tear and rake," he said. "Pythons crush. This is different. Look at the spacing. The entry is narrow but very deep. There is bruising around each point. The force came from above." He spoke in a flat manner, the way he did when examining a specimen in a jar. His glasses had fogged. He wiped them with an impatient gesture, leaving streaks. I looked up without meaning to. The branches above the clearing rose high, interlocked in a web of wood. There were scuff marks on some of them, lighter patches where bark had been disturbed. Satria spoke to Yusuf in a strained whisper. Yusuf listened and nodded. "He says we are in its hunting ground," Yusuf told us. "He says it drops without warning. He thinks this kill is from last night. He wants to reach the river by sunset and camp there instead." Harrington closed his notebook with more force than needed. "We continue to the river as planned," he said. "But there is no cause to rush. An animal that feeds here will not wait by the water to greet us." I did not argue with him. It was not my place. Still, as we moved on, I found my eyes drawn more often to the spaces above and around us than to the path itself. Each gust of air against my neck made me tense. The forest no longer felt neutral. It felt observed. As the day wore on, the oddities multiplied. We passed another stream where no birds called. Later, we reached a section of forest where many branches bore broken ends, all at a similar height. Some lay on the ground, stripped of smaller twigs. Once a shower of dry leaves fell without any clear cause. No animal showed itself. No wind preceded it. Conversation dwindled. Even Edwin grew quiet, save for occasional questions that died halfway out of his mouth. When we did speak, our voices stayed low, as if we did not want them to carry too far. By mid-afternoon, my legs ached and my shirt clung to me again. The need for rest pressed against the urge to keep moving. Harrington called a brief halt beside a fallen log. We drank, wiped our faces, and checked our packs. I became aware of a new sound then. At first, I thought it was my own pulse, but it did not match my heartbeat. It was a faint rush, distant and steady, above the insect noise. It came and went in regular intervals, a slow, broad movement through air. I lifted my head. The canopy gave nothing away. The sound faded, returned, faded again. "Do you hear that?" I asked. Edwin nodded, eyes fixed on the patch of sky he could see between leaves. "It is following us," he said. Harrington stood. "No one is following us," he said. But he did not sound convinced. He signaled for us to continue. Satria moved ahead more quickly, urging the porters along with short gestures. The rest of us fell in line, glancing upward more than forward. The forest grew darker as we approached the river. The canopy thickened. The ground softened under our boots. The air cooled slightly, but the heaviness remained. My shoulders ached from my pack. Sweat trickled down my back in narrow trails. I tried to focus on the rhythm of walking, on the sound of my feet in the leaves, but the faint rush above us kept returning. It drifted in and out as though something large glided from one opening in the trees to another. We reached the river just before dusk. It was wider than I expected, slow-moving, with muddy banks and roots curling into the water. Mist hovered above the surface. The far bank was thick with undergrowth. The sky appeared in a strip between treetops, pale and nearing twilight. "This will do," Harrington said. He spoke as if announcing victory, but the lines around his eyes had deepened. "We camp here for the night." Satria disagreed before the words finished echoing. He spoke quickly to Yusuf, who looked uneasy as he translated. "He says the river is safer than the forest, but he wants the fires on both sides of camp," Yusuf said. "He wants us close to the water, but not too close. He says the creature stays above ground. It avoids the open space near the river, but only when there is light." Edwin crouched by the bank, dipped his hand into the water and wiped his forehead. "I do not want to sleep anywhere near trees tonight," he said. His shoulders shook slightly, though he tried to hide it. We set up camp on a raised patch of earth about 10 yards from the water. 2 fires were built, one near the tents, one near the bank. The porters worked quickly, cutting branches and arranging stones. The flames caught just as the sky dimmed. Night gathered with a speed I had not experienced before India or Africa. One moment the world was tinted gold, the next it pressed in from every direction. The river made a quiet sound as it moved. Insects rose from the bank in small swarms. A shape darted across the surface and vanished. The fires crackled. Sparks rose and drifted into the gap between the trees. We all stayed closer to the light than usual. Even Harrington kept his seat near the larger fire. He cleaned his rifle with deliberate motions, as though the routine itself steadied him. Wilkes studied the dark shapes across the river. The glow from the flames reflected in his lenses, obscuring his eyes. The forest felt tense, not silent, but tight. The night creatures called, but their rhythm lacked ease. Their sounds seemed cautious, as though they were waiting for something else to speak first. We did not wait long. "Ahool!" The sound rose from the darkness beyond the trees. This time the clarity struck me harder than before. The cry felt closer, fuller. It passed through the clearing like a pressure wave. Edwin flinched so sharply he knocked over his tin cup. Wilkes inhaled sharply and gripped his knee. "It is on the other side of the river," I said. The words came out before I thought them through. Satria stood with his back to the fire, facing the forest. He held his rifle in both hands. Yusuf moved behind him, keeping close. The porters gathered near the tents, eyes wide. Another call came. Again the same shape, short, drawn out, unmistakable. "Ahool!" This time it came from above us, not directly overhead, but above the treetops on our side of the river. My chest tightened. The hairs on my arms rose. Something large moved through the air in a slow arc. Leaves shook as though brushed by wind. Small branches broke. More leaves fell. Harrington rose to his feet. "We stay at the fires," he said. "Everyone stays in the light." But the light felt thinner than ever. It reached only so far before dissolving into black. Even the flames themselves seemed smaller, as if the night absorbed them. A sudden gust pushed through the clearing. It was not wind from the river. It came from above, descending slightly before passing outward. The flames wavered. Smoke shifted sideways. I gripped my pack without thinking. My fingers dug into the canvas. "There," Edwin whispered. We followed his gaze to a gap in the canopy near the far fire. For a moment I saw nothing. Then I realized something blocked the stars. A wide shape moved between branches. Its edges were soft in the darkness, but its span was unmistakable. Large, outstretched. It glided with no flapping motion. A heavy outline over the leaves, but silent except for the faint movement of displaced air. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, swallowed by the dark. Harrington raised his rifle, but he had no target. His movements felt small compared to the size of the thing above us. A call sounded again, this time deeper, louder. The cry echoed off the water and rolled through the clearing. Ahoo! The pitch vibrated inside my ribs. It is warning us, I thought. The idea came uninvited. It did not feel like fear speaking, it felt like observation. The creature knew we were here. It wanted us to understand that. Wilkes broke the silence. If it is territorial, he said, we may appear as intruders. Harrington turned to him sharply. We are not leaving at night, he said. We stay until morning. No movement from camp. A branch snapped above us. This time it was close. Leaves fell in a dozen small showers. One landed on my shoulder. It was damp and cold. The porters backed away from the tree line. One made a sound that was neither word nor breath, something between fear and restraint. Satria lifted his rifle. His posture tightened. His eyes did not blink. The creature did not reveal itself yet, but the canopy shifted. Something heavy moved along a line of branches. Each shift produced a soft thud followed by the rustle of leaves. Then silence. Then another shift. It was circling just beyond the reach of the firelight. The feeling of being watched grew heavier. We moved the fires further out, Edwin said. His voice shook. We need more space, more light. We cannot wait for it to come down. It will not attack while we stay in the open, Harrington said. How do you know? Edwin asked. Harrington had no answer. Another cry burst from directly above the center of the clearing. Ahoo! The sound was so loud I felt it through the soil. Something dropped through the canopy. Not all the way, just enough to shake the branches. Large wings bent and pulled back. A heavy body shifted upward again in a single strong motion. Leaves rained down in a wide circle. The glimpse I caught then stayed with me. Dark wings with a leathery texture, a short body with dense fur, and a head that turned sharply toward the fire. I saw eyes reflect the flames with a pale, cold gleam. The face held a focus that froze me. It did not look curious. It looked deliberate. Then it vanished back into the dark. Harrington finally swore under his breath. He checked the clip in his rifle with rigid hands. We hold this ground, he said. No one wanders. No one sleeps. The creature moved again, circling wider now. The sound of wings came in low intervals, always shifting position. Sometimes near the river, sometimes over the deeper forest, sometimes overhead. We waited. Minutes stretched thin. The tension in the air felt sharp enough to touch. It finally broke with a sudden movement at the tree line. A shadow lunged downward. Something struck the ground near the far fire with a heavy impact. The flames bent toward it, then away. We sprang to our feet, rifles raised. Sparks shot upward, the air filled with the smell of disturbed earth. But the shadow retreated before any of us fired. A warning strike, a test. The creature was judging us. The clearing felt smaller after that strike, as if the trees had drawn closer in the dark. The air grew tense again. Every person near the fire stood rigid. My pulse thinned into a tight, steady beat that seemed to echo inside my skull. No one spoke. Even Harrington didn't issue instructions. It was as if our voices might pull the creature down on us. A few moments passed. Then the canopy shifted again. A branch snapped somewhere over the river, and then another, slightly closer. The movements were controlled, not frantic. I realized the creature wasn't uncertain at all. It was observing how we reacted, circling with intention, waiting for the position that suited it. Wilkes whispered, "It is testing the boundary of the light." His voice trembled, but the words were steady. Harrington began to form a reply, but he stopped. He listened. I did too. The night insects had changed rhythm. Their chirping thinned until only a few faint sounds remained. This silence did not feel natural. It felt imposed. I felt the change in pressure before I heard the wings. A broad gust swept downward from the canopy. The fire nearest the water bent sideways and spit out a wave of sparks. The sudden rush of heat cut across the clearing. I stepped back instinctively. Satria gripped his rifle tighter. The creature passed above us again, but lower this time. The outline of its wings formed a wide arc. Two long claws extended from the tips. Its body shifted as it glided, and then a detail that forced all air from my lungs. The head turned mid-flight, angling downward toward us with a smooth precision no bird or bat had ever shown me. The eyes caught the firelight again. They reflected it in a pale, focused glow that pierced straight into our clearing. Edwin stumbled back until he nearly fell into the tent ropes. "It's choosing a target," he said, barely audible. Harrington raised his rifle. "Hold," he said. "We do not fire until we have a clear shot." Wilkes shook his head. "We may not get one, sir." The creature's cry snapped the air. "Ahool!" This time it came from directly above the river, loud enough to shake loose several clusters of leaves. They drifted over the water in a slow scatter. The cry was longer, stretched until it felt like a pressure on my lungs. The creature dropped lower again. A shadow swept across the riverbank. The porters huddled near the larger fire. Two clutched each other's shoulders. Yusuf positioned himself between them and Satria as though proximity to the rifle offered protection. Another gust hit us. The second fire flickered dangerously. The creature wasn't attacking yet, it was wearing us down. "We must widen the fires," Wilkes said suddenly. "More wood, more flames. If it avoids bright light..." Before he could finish, the creature descended again, fast. A heavy shape plunged toward the far fire. It struck the earth on the outer edge of the light, just beyond our full view. The impact shook the ground. Embers shot out in a spreading arc. The flames dipped, flared, dipped again. Something moved inside the darkness at the edge of the firelight. A body crouched low, wings folded tight along its sides, head tilted upward as if tasting the air. I couldn't see its face clearly, but I saw the outline of its jaw and the movement of its breath. It waited there, half in shadow, half illuminated by the flickering glow. Its claws dug into the soil. A second later, it sprang upward. A leap, powerful and silent. Branches above snapped as it pushed off them. Leaves spiraled down. The creature vanished into the canopy. My knees felt weak. I steadied myself against my pack, breathing through a tightness in my chest. "It could have taken any of us just then," Edwin whispered. Harrington wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his forearm. "It didn't because we stayed in the open," he said. "It can't commit to an attack with this much light." "It will wait until someone crosses the shadows," Wilkes said, "or until one of the fires dies." Satria spoke quickly to Yusuf. His tone carried urgency and a rising fear. "He says we cannot stay here," Yusuf translated. "He says the creature is angry. He says it knows we are not leaving. He thinks it is waiting for exhaustion. He says if one of the fires drops, even a little, it will strike." "We cannot move at night," Harrington snapped. Satria replied before Yusuf translated. The words carried strain, sharp and fast. "He says if we stay, someone will die," Yusuf said. "He says the creature will not allow a foreign group to sleep in its hunting ground." Harrington stood still for several seconds. His jaw tightened. His pride fought the reality forming around us. The lamps, the fires, the loaded rifles, all of them combined, would not change the fact that we were surrounded by trees and darkness far deeper than our light could push back. "We wait," Harrington said at last. "No movement, no panic. We hold the light." But even as he said it, the creature swept above us again. A dark mass moved just beyond the fire's reach. The faint outline of wings traced over the clearing. A low growl rolled from its throat, not loud, but deep enough to vibrate the air. It was the first time we'd heard anything from it aside from its cry. A moment later, another sound followed. A howl from not far downriver, sharp, panicked, cut short. It didn't come from the creature. It came from something else. An animal, perhaps a small deer or boar, caught by surprise. A splash followed, then silence. Wilkes exhaled shakily. "It is hunting while watching us." "Or demonstrating what it can do," I said. Another gust of displaced air swept across the clearing, bending the flames again. Harrington finally lowered his rifle a fraction. He didn't speak, but his expression changed in a way I'd never seen. His usual certainty had thinned into worry. Satria stepped forward, placing himself beside the fire. His eyes moved steadily across the dark, tracing the patches where branches moved without wind. He pointed once toward the trees, almost flinching as he did. The creature was climbing. We watched it ascend in stages, branch by branch, quiet despite its weight. Each shift made only a soft scrape. It moved to the highest point over the riverbank. Then it hung there, still, deliberate. "Is it waiting for someone to drift too far from the light?" Edwin whispered. "Or it is studying how we react to being watched," Wilkes replied, voice tight. Night deepened. The fires became the only color in the world. Everything else blurred into black shapes. The creature's outline blended into the canopy, but the white reflection of its eyes remained faintly visible, watching us. Minutes stretched on. Sweat slid down my back again, chilled now instead of warm. The fire snapped. One ember floated upward and died. I imagined the creature following its path with complete attention. Then, finally, the tension broke. Not with an attack, but with movement. The creature launched itself from the highest branch. It glided far above the river, then turned sharply, too sharply for its size, and climbed again until it vanished behind a dense patch of foliage. It was repositioning, reassessing, preparing. Harrington whispered, "It is waiting for the moment we cannot maintain both fires." And he was right. Our supply of dry wood was running out. The night was long, the creature was patient. We would not last until dawn unchanged. The fires crackled with an uneven rhythm. The shadows they cast reached farther between each burst of flame. Every time the light thinned, the creature shifted position above us. Its movements were small but deliberate, an adjustment of weight, a push off a branch, a silent glide from one perch to another. It was waiting for a gap. I felt the intention behind its patterns as clearly as if it spoke. Satria moved to the edge of the clearing with a bundle of sticks he had collected earlier. He fed them into the smaller fire, but the flames only rose for a moment before settling again. Sweat ran down his temple, and he wiped it with the back of his arm without looking away from the tree line. "We do not have enough fuel to last until morning," Wilkes whispered. His voice trembled with the strain of holding his fear in check. "We barely have enough to last a few more hours." Harrington refused to look at him. "Then we ration it," he said. "We must keep both fires alive." Edwin stared at the flames with a hollow expression. "If one fire weakens, it will strike there. If both weaken, it will come from the dark at any angle. How are we meant to defend all sides?" A faint snap came from above us, light, crisp, deliberate. The creature had repositioned again. I could not see its full outline, but I saw fragments. The shift of wings, the curl of a claw, the subtle motion of its body as it crouched on a heavy branch. Its eyes glowed in the dark, catching the firelight with a low, pale shine. "It knows we're weakening," I said. Harrington looked at me then. For the first time since we left London, I saw uncertainty break through his controlled demeanor. His authority faltered under the weight of something that did not belong to the world he understood. "We cannot move at night," he said again, softer this time. "We would not see 5 paces in front of us." "We would not need to see 5, Edwin said. "We would hear it before that." Wilkes shook his head. "You heard the way it moves. Sometimes, not even that." The creature glided into view again. A shadow moved above the river, passing in front of the faint strip of sky. The wings stretched wide, more than twice the height of a man. The motion was smooth, controlled, without a single beat to hold it up. It turned over the water in a long arc, then vanished behind a cluster of trees. But it did not keep moving. It had landed, close enough that the air shifted. Harrington finally spoke the thought we all shared. "If it comes down again, it won't be a test." A low growl drifted from the direction where it had landed. Not loud, not a challenge, more like a message. The sound rolled across the riverbank and pressed into the clearing. Wilkes backed away toward the larger fire. "It is warning us again," he whispered, "or deciding which of us is the easiest to take." The porters clutched their supplies, unable to look away from the tree line. Yusuf murmured prayers under his breath. Even the insects had fallen into a thin and uneasy silence. Another branch snapped behind us, closer. Satria spun, rifle raised. His movements were tense but controlled. He whispered something quick and urgent, and Yusuf translated with a tight voice. "He says it is circling again," Yusuf said, "but it is lower than before. It is preparing to dive." Edwin stepped closer to me. His shoulders shook. "If it dives, we won't be able to stop it. Not with rifles, not with anything." He wasn't wrong. The creature dropped from the canopy like a stone earlier. It had lifted itself again with one powerful motion. If it wanted to crush one of us, it would. Harrington adjusted his stance. "If it comes for us, aim for the chest, not the wings. Don't shoot blindly. Wait for the moment you can see it clearly." "There won't be a clear moment," Wilkes said. "Not until it's already on someone." Another gust swept down from the canopy. Sparks jumped into the air. The fires strained. One flame bowed low, almost touching the ground before rising again. The creature's silhouette appeared in the treetops on our side of the river. For the first time, it perched fully in view, just beyond the firelight. Its wings folded tight, its body hunched forward. The coarse fur on its back caught the faint glow of the flames in rough patches. Its arms, or wings, were thicker than any bat's. The claws at the ends curled around the branch with a steady grip. The head angled slightly, revealing its jawline lined with narrow, sharp teeth. Its eyes reflected the light in twin pale points. It was studying us with a stillness that felt wrong. My throat tightened. My mind tried to catalog its features, but the details unsettled me. The creature resembled both a massive bat and something older, something that did not fit into neat categories. Its proportions were wrong in ways that I could not fix in my thoughts. Then it opened its mouth. The cry was the loudest yet. Ahool! The force of the sound made the flames bow again. It rolled across the clearing and echoed down the river. Several of the porters dropped to their knees, clutching their ears. Wilkes stumbled back and nearly fell. I felt the vibration deep in my chest. Harrington gripped his rifle and shouted, "Hold position!" The creature responded by shifting its weight, preparing to launch. Satria shouted something to Yusuf, who translated with a strained voice. "He says if we do not run now, it will kill one of us. He says there is no more time." But Harrington refused to abandon his ground. His pride anchored him even as the creature crouched lower. "Hold," he began. He never finished. The creature dropped. Not a glide this time, a dive. A heavy mass hurtled toward the smaller fire, aiming for the weakest point of light. The air cracked with the force of its descent. The fire collapsed outward as the creature struck the ground beside it. Embers sprayed across the earth. The shadows doubled in size. The light fell apart. The creature's arm swept through the remnants of the flame, scattering the last burning pieces. The fire went out completely. Darkness swallowed that half of the clearing. The creature turned its head, its pale eyes locked onto the nearest figure. "Edwin." He froze. The creature stepped toward him, slow and deliberate. And that was the moment the camp broke. Satria fired first. The crack of his rifle split the night. A burst of fur flew from the creature's shoulder. It recoiled, not out of pain, but surprise. Harrington shouted something I couldn't hear over the ringing in my ears. Wilkes scrambled toward the larger fire, grabbing burning branches and throwing them outward to widen the light. The creature crouched low, preparing to strike. I had no time to think, no room for reflection, only the clear knowledge that if the creature chose Edwin, there would be no saving him. The attack was seconds away. Our only light was failing. We were out of time. The creature lunged. Its wings opened only halfway, enough to push a burst of air across the ground. Edwin stumbled backward, tripping on a supply crate. He hit the earth hard and scrambled with his hands behind him, heels digging grooves into the dirt. His breath came in short, panicked bursts. The creature's shadow loomed over him. Its claws dug into the soil as it prepared to spring again. Satria shouted and fired a second shot. The bullet struck the creature's flank. It staggered a step but did not retreat. Its head snapped toward Satria with a sharp, decisive motion. Its mouth opened wide, revealing rows of thin, pointed teeth. It let out a short, violent growl. Harrington fired next. His shot grazed the back of the creature's skull, sending a spray of fur into the air. It snarled and leapt sideways, using its wings to propel itself across the clearing in a swift arc. It landed near the edge of the larger fire, claws digging into the earth. Sparks scattered around its feet. Wilkes kept grabbing burning branches and dragging them outward, widening the circle of firelight as fast as he could. The flames rose higher with every branch he added. He risked getting too close to the shadows each time, but he did not stop. His glasses fogged, but his hands moved with desperate clarity. Edwin crawled toward the light. I ran to him, pulling him upright by the arm. His legs shook, barely supporting him. We backed toward the main fire, step by step, never turning our backs on the creature. It watched us with slow, steady focus. The glow from the flames reached its body now. The detailed shape of it became clearer. The wings were thick with cartilage. The fur clung to its torso in uneven patches. Its arms bent with an unsettling structure between primate and bat. Its face held a rigid animal intent, not instinctive but purposeful. Then its gaze shifted, not toward us, toward the fire. With a sudden motion, it dropped low and swept one wing across the ground. The wind from it threw dirt and leaves into the flames. The fire bent sideways. Sparks shot into the air. The bright glow faltered. Wilkes shouted, "Keep it bright! Keep it bright!" But the creature moved again, faster this time. It struck the far edge of the fire with another sweep. A burst of embers exploded upward. The flames wavered, almost collapsing. I felt a cold weight drop into my stomach. It was trying to extinguish our last source of protection. Harrington stepped forward, rifle raised, and fired at the creature's chest. The shot landed hard. The creature rocked back, wings spreading wide in reflex. A sharp cry burst from its mouth, not the familiar call, but a raw, guttural sound. It retreated several paces, claws digging deep trenches in the soil. For a moment, it hesitated. A brief, wavering pause. A chance. "Satria," I called. "The lanterns!" He understood instantly. He grabbed 2 oil lanterns from the supplies and smashed them against the ground around the fire, letting the oil spill outward. Wilkes struck a burning branch against the oil. Flames surged outward in a widening ring, stretching toward the tree line. The clearing brightened. The shadows thinned. The creature hissed and pulled back. Its wings curled inward. It shifted its weight from one clawed foot to the other as the fire grew brighter and hotter than before. Harrington raised his rifle again, but this time he did not fire. His voice lowered. "It can't approach now. Not with this much light." The creature paced at the edge of the new fire line. It circled. It tested the ring of flames once, stepping close enough that its fur caught the glow of the heat. Then it recoiled again, disgusted or angered by the brightness. Its eyes flicked between us and the gap between 2 trees, where the darkness remained thick. It made a choice. With a sharp push, it leapt into the air. Its wings unfolded fully, not gliding this time, but beating once with enough force to lift its entire body in a single burst. Leaves shot upward in spirals. The firelight caught the underside of its wings as it climbed through the canopy. It vanished into the night. The only sign of its retreat was the fading sound of branches shifting far above us. Then silence. Not normal silence, heavy, drained, waiting. No one spoke for several seconds. Edwin collapsed to his knees, shaking from head to toe. His hands pressed into the dirt as he struggled to breathe. Wilkes knelt beside him, rubbing his back with a trembling hand. Satria lowered his rifle and wiped his forehead with his sleeve. The porters sank to the ground together, exhausted, whispering to each other with relief and disbelief. I stood still, chest rising and falling with slow, stunned breaths. My legs felt unsteady, as though they did not remember how to support me. Sweat cooled on my back in a way that left me shivering. Harrington alone remained upright. His face was pale, rigid with something that looked unfamiliar on him. Fear, yes, but also understanding. His pride had cracked. The certainty he had carried from London to Java had been burned away by the night. He lowered his rifle slowly. "It will return at dawn," he said quietly. Wilkes looked up at him. "Do you think it hunts in daylight?" "It hunts anything that threatens its territory," Harrington said. "It will want to make sure we are gone." Edwin's voice broke. "We can't stay here. Not another night. We can't." And no one disagreed. We kept the fire blazing for the rest of the night. No one slept. Our eyes remained fixed on the tree line. The creature called once more in the distance, but it did not come close again. The call sounded frustrated, then it moved farther away. When the sky finally began to lighten, the relief felt fragile. Dawn crept in slowly, pushing back the thickest parts of the night. The trees regained their shapes. The river showed its surface again. The air warmed slightly. Only when the forest was fully visible did we begin packing. We did not speak much. Each of us understood what had happened without needing to put words to it. The exhaustion settled into our bones. The night had stretched us thin. We crossed the ridge in silence, each man listening for something above us. The creature never showed itself again, but the fear of it followed us with every step. By the time we reached the settlement near the river junction, all 4 British members of the expedition looked different. Older, heavier in spirit, marked by what we had seen. The locals did not need an explanation. When we arrived, covered in dirt and smoke, the porters speaking hurriedly with unsteady voices, the villagers knew at once that we had met something in the deep forest. One elder approached us. He said nothing at first. He looked at our faces, one by one, then nodded slowly. When he finally spoke to Yusuf, the translation was simple. He says, "You have seen enough." We left Java 2 days later. Harrington submitted a brief report upon our return to England, but it omitted much of what had happened. There was no mention of the fire line or the dive or the moment it nearly took Edwin. The official account described a large, possibly unknown species of bat that displayed territorial behavior. But the truth remained with us. An enormous creature still lived in the forests of western Indonesia, intelligent enough to test, strong enough to kill, silent enough to stalk from above without warning. Its call still echoed in my mind, sharp and deliberate. Since that night, I have never camped beneath a canopy without watching the branches above me. I no longer trust the quiet spaces between trees or the stillness that falls before dawn. Something in that forest watched us with a focus no animal should possess, and I know, without doubt, that if we had stayed one moment longer, only one, the Ahool would have taken one of us.